Himself going to be eating a shock dart, but he's able to makes it win anything.
Sam, defend your team, because they haven't won.
Oh, my God.
Strap yourselves in, it's another 1 hour episode.
Oh, yeah.
Spike defused.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever Press 4 to Defuse live from our studio. We've got a studio. We've got a set. It's really big, as you can tell.
Right.
I promise I'm not actually just short.
Okay.
I've got a studio and a set because I'm in the wonderful US of A, where we're actually based and located. Sam and Ryan, they haven't changed. They're still joining me from abroad, beaming on in here through the internet sets. Sam, how do you like our shiny new set?
I hate it purely because I'm not there. Were I there, I would love it. But by virtue of the fact that I cannot be there, it sucks.
Ryan, how you feel
I'm
about
going to
this?
go through it.
I like the box.
I'd like to see Plat Chat and Valorant in studio. Thank you very much.
Yeah, suck on it.
It's a race to the moon, and we're already there, baby. Like this is the next step.
We have the technology, and we've also got a lot of news to get into. So that's one thing that's also not going to change. So we're going to be breaking down this week's Valorant esports news and talking about it like we usually do. I'm going to just do a little shuffle on over to my next shot. That's right, we've got multiple shots here. We're pretty fancy. We're pretty cool. Here we go. This is our three heads up on the stadium, on the studio. Feels good, feels shiny, feels fresh. It also means that we're going to be able to talk about some of the news that's been happening. First up, roster shuffles. This is our segment. We call it Run It Back. It's where we talk about the last week in news. Lots of changes. We kind of knew it was coming just by virtue of this being the gap in the VCT calendar. This is the time to make your changes, and the changes, they continue apace. We'll start out in EU here, and we're going to start out with Vitality as well. They've made a major coaching change. The first piece that was added to their roster, the man who built the team, is gone. Fragon is out, and we've got his replacement, PM, coming in. What do we make of this one, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I actually feel a bit bad for Fragon overall, because if you remember, Vitality did really well, like in the recent Stage 2, right? Challenges 2, they knocked out Ascend, and they also lost to Fnatic in a decent game, and Fnatic obviously qualified for Reykjavik. So it's not really a bad run with recent changes, bringing in Jesmond and Loki. So I feel a bit bad for him. The timing was really off on this, but I think Vitality's a big org, and they can't accept mediocre performances, especially when you have a team of players that they have. You kind of need to be doing a little bit better overall. So feel bad, but hopefully it's a step in the right direction for Vitality overall.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad given the storyline. There was a little storyline that Halo was kind of pushing on social media where he made a comment about how Fragon is one of the best coaches in the region, or possibly the best coach in the region. There's a little bit of a clap back there from, Artis, G2 and crew. And there were some results that came through that had Halo quote tweeting his own words. So Vitality did have a very good run for a while. And like Ryan says, it's really sad, particularly because Fragon built the team. This was his kind of pet project. He put it all together. He made it happen. That's the team that got results. And then, of course, they started making swap-ups because results weren't continuing. And now they've brought in PM, who I believe is a caster. And this isn't the first time that we're seeing this. I know Alliance, obviously, they signed 2 casters in Banks and Mitch. And we saw what fantastic results Alliance have been bringing home. So I'm here for it. If it works, it works.
Ryan, you know anything else about PM, the new guy on the block?
No, not really. I imagine it'd be a French caster, if anything.
Yes.
But it feels like I think Nell is one of those people that has a real hate boner for how Vitality have been doing in Valorant up until that point, wanting a French team and stuff. But it seems that most people that have seen this have welcomed it a lot. But I do think that, considering that Fragon put together this squad piece by piece for Vitality, I do think there's going to be a bit of a culture shock, I suppose, for the players with these changes. But we've seen other teams just go on a massive momentum streak and do really well. fingers crossed that's Vitality, because I love the players in this team.
It's always a little bit of an adjustment period, if you will, when you're bringing a new guy in who hasn't necessarily fulfilled the coaching role before or hasn't recently or whatever the situation is. There's always that like degree of respect that's needed if you're going to be taking the helm on the coaching role. So it'll be interesting to see how PM adjusts. I know they had a lot of success bringing XQTaz in for their CS roster, and I believe he was filling a similar role beforehand as well in the French scene, doing some casting and broadcast work. So potentially trying to replicate that success here in Valorant. You can understand why it'd be attractive for a team like Vitality to try and replicate. But we'll go ahead and shuffle on. We've got more topics on our Magic floating topic board. Ghost Gaming hopping back across the pond, back to the old US of A. We got some changes coming through for Ghost. They have made some moves. They picked up Ryan. He was playing with that Dignitas team. You'll remember him from that. He didn't get much of a run on that because by the time he joined, that team was already kind of starting to circle the drain. But now he gets a shot on Ghost. And Ryan's a player, again, who comes over from CS, who I've known for a long time from his competitive career there. Very, very solid player. He's maybe not going to be the guy who's always going to be popping off with the crazy, highlight 4Ks, but he's always going to be doing his job. He's always going to be playing smart and disciplined and playing well in a team unit, and he can be a really good building block for a team. What do we make of this move, Sam?
This, it's unsurprising that a team like Ghost Gaming would want Ryan. I'll put it that way. I would have thought that potentially Ryan might have gone to a bigger or more prominent team, but I think any team that picks him up is better off. I remember the first time I saw him compete after he joined Dignitas, and I was blown away. And I remember our Ryan kind of waxing lyrical about him when Ryan and Rara had joined Dignitas, and he was kind of waxing lyrical about that. And then I got to see them compete. I was like, wow, these guys are really great, which was why the kind of disbanding came as such a shock to me. So to see Ryan on a new team is not surprising at all. I think it's about damn time. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the roster can do. We're going to talk about it in a little bit, but he did compete just yesterday and unfortunately didn't manage to go the distance, but had some good numbers on the board. So already starting to make some waves.
Ryan, how do you feel about Ryan?
I mean, great
How
player.
do you feel about yourself?
Best in the world. Best name as well. Yeah, I mean, like, we got to see a nice spark of him, I suppose, on a lot of stages of Dignitas. I think he played for Envy and Counter-Strike as well, didn't he, for a period?
Yeah.
So, a lot of experience, still relatively young. Ghost are actually putting together a monster team with all of the free agents at the moment. So, I think picking up Ryan is a nice move for them. And like Sam said, I could have definitely seen him at some other bigger and more prolific teams that are doing well in VCT, but he seems pretty happy to be part of Ghost.
Yeah, and speaking of Ghost, that's not where they ended. They've also dropped Payan from the roster to their reserve. He's on the bench. And they're trialing Kohler, a player who was just on Beast Coast. That Beast Coast team,
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed that Beast Coast team died because it looked like they were going to be kind of exciting. That was Fraud getting to do his whole vision. They were building up that roster. They had something in the works, and then wham, dead. But Kohler quickly finds a new home, which isn't surprising. He's got a lot of skill. So he's trialing for this team. How do we think that trial's going to go? Personally, I'm feeling optimistic here, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the better free agents out there. He's building up an infinity gauntlet of teams that he's played for at this point, like Immortals, NRG, Beast Coast, and now Ghost. It's just a shame that things are going so rocky for him because he's had his bright spells for sure, and hopefully he can land a move on the team that lasts more than 3 weeks at this point.
It would be nice to see, Sam.
That is the dream, isn't it? Yeah. Just to survive for longer than 5 minutes. Much the same as what I said about Ryan. This is a good player who I think has a lot of potential and is probably going to do some good things over on Ghost. And again, we'll go into a little bit more detail when we talk about the NSG tournament a bit later, but things are starting to happen. So looking forward to seeing the future. Yeah,
that Ghost roster is starting to look kind of dangerous, kind of looking a little bit interesting. We're hopping back to EU. This one's the FPX change. FPX dropped Yonta. That was something needed to give for FPX, right? They came into the EMEA finals with the expectation that they were the favorite, that they were going to win the whole dang thing and make their way to Iceland, and they didn't do that. They went out in disappointing fashion, and when that happens, when you're slated as the best team in the region, potentially the best team in the world, and you don't get the result you need, heads are going to roll. Yeah. And apparently this time around, it was Yontas. They're going to be bringing in Doom Bros, or rather promoting Doom Bros into the full coaching role, apparently. What do we make of that one, Ryan?
I feel he was scapegoated a little bit. I don't think the move was really necessary. I think it's just like from what Jonta said as well, it was just the higher members of FPX wanting a change because yet again, they didn't perform well. Similar to what happened to Meadow, but that feels like it was more a team decision to bring in Dimasic. this is kind of a bit of a short-sighted move, I feel, overall, because if you're dropping somebody, nice transition, and you're like, Eric's great. Doomboss is a great analyst, but I don't know how he's going to do as a coach. And now he's in sort of like the crossfire if things go wrong, which I don't think is really fair. So like firing a coach and not really having another one lined up for that position, like some prolific mind in the CIS region, for example, it just kind of makes me feel like FPX need to have somebody be the fall guy of their previous failings, I suppose, with challenges too and all that jazz.
Sammy, you
I
agree with
believe that to an extent, yeah. I think I can also agree that there's potentially the kind of scapegoat effect. Like something's got to give, something has to move, parts have to move so that we can start to move forward. What the hell is that panda? That is the best thing in this whole show.
It's a panda.
Sorry, it's super
Alex
sidetracked.
Floating that in the camera. All right, back to Doom Bros. Back to Doom Bros. Back to Yonta.
Yes, back to Doom Bros. Yeah. So I know that he was coaching before getting onto FPX, which I mean that's how he got discovered by FPX. He was coaching one of the teams. And I do know from my Overwatch days that there are some people who are phenomenal analysts that understand the game to a level that I can only aspire to, and that I know a lot of people can only aspire to, but they don't necessarily make the best coaches, because coaching is effectively being a teacher. And I like Doombros. I've had a few interactions with him. I think he's really cool. I really enjoy him. But I don't know jack diddly squat about his coaching ability. Excuse me. So I think that's what's really going to become evident as we kind of move forward here. So was this an upgrade? Time will tell. But I think it's really cool that he's been given the opportunity to prove himself and see what he does with it.
It certainly does put him in the crosshairs, right? As you said, Ryan, it's a high-pressure situation when you've seen that the team expects to perform at the top level. And if they don't, if they have a failing, if they get knocked out in a tournament, there's an expectation that someone's going to be taking responsibility and that a change is going to be brought through. You've set that standard now if you're FPX. Now, that can be good. You know, you expect the top tier of results. You expect greatness. But it can also create a pretty hostile environment for players and coaches where it's like, all right, if I mess up here, even if we're trying to implement a new system, we're trying to spend a long, like, if it looks like we're not having immediate success, maybe I'm not long for this world. I think that's perhaps a bit of a concern for team culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know for FPX, and I think the problem came down to tactics or decision-making from, like, an understanding of the game level. It just felt like it came down to nerves, and it all falling apart on the day as well. So you want to be hiring, like, people that can help with the psychological side of it, not firing your coach and having to shuffle around whose responsibilities are what. I mean, luckily, FPX still have a player like Angel, who is very much hands-on. He's almost a coach to an extent when it comes to how the team functions. So if Doombros can support that as much as he can and just chime in with what an analyst typically does is, oh, we're playing up against Team Liquid. This is what they like to do. They run these set strategies. This is what we should focus on overall. I think that's going to be really difficult to do alongside with man management. I think like Salah's a really good example of that from like previous Bonk and now Honk, where tactically, he has like some good ideas, but from my experience talking to him, he's more of like a man manager, I suppose, like making sure that the players are calm and collected going into it. And that's just a whole different sign of work that I think Doombros quickly has to adjust to now, instead of just being this is what the teams like to do that we're playing up against, here's how we beat them. It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, that it certainly is. Talking about another role swap we had here, or another move, Eccles, who was benched from Liquid for a while now, but he is now no longer a part of that roster, no longer part of that team. They've made the move. They've liberated him, freed him. Dobby's a free house elf. He can go to any team now.
God.
My question is, do we think he's going to? I think there were some rumors linking him potentially to NIP, if I'm not completely off base here. There's been some rumors floating around that he might head this way, might head that way. Now there's no buyout associated with him. Do we think that's going to trigger a change here?
I mean, I hope so. There's not that many IGLs right now in the scene overall, right? So I do think that there's a positive side of that overall. Eccles could be picked up for a team that needs somebody like that, but again, I feel like he was a bit scapegoated overall, right, when it comes to Team Liquid's performances, and now they've gone to Reykjavik. Some people would obviously kind of go, oh, well, Eccles is the problem then, which I don't necessarily think is fair. But I think that kind of player is going to be useful for one of the A-tier, maybe even S-tier teams within the region. But Depends which one needs an IGL desperately.
Good timing.
I'm getting it down. I'm getting it down. I see the swipe come through, and it's like sidestep into the angle. little relocate. Maybe a dismiss, one might say. Little relocation going on here.
Get out.
Rainer on
Just
Iceland.
blast
How
pack.
about that?
You need to bunny hop and then pretend you threw out a blast pack. That's
There
where that
you go.
is.
There you go. Blast pack throw.
Anyways.
Give me a rocket launcher. That's the only good things coming from that. Go ahead.
God. I just hope that no teams... So, any team worth its salt will not look at, oh, this player got dropped, therefore they're bad, and we're just not going to look at them. Because I think that there's still a lot of potential in Eccles, and there have been a lot of instances where a player is dropped from the team, not because of a performance problem, but because of something to do with kind of the direction the team wants to take, or maybe the vibe within, amongst the players or whatever. There's always like a bunch of different reasons that can go into it. And I think that as a player, in terms of Eccles' like actual ability, there's still a lot of potential there that could be tapped into. So I personally haven't seen any of these rumors. I don't know how. Apparently I'm living under a rock. But I don't know if I see him going to NIP per se. But I hope that he does get picked up by a decent and kind of higher tier team, because like I said, there's still a lot to him that can shine through with under the right conditions.
I think he's also the kind of player who can maybe in a different structure bring structure to a team if they got a lot of firepower, but maybe need to figure out some of the more balanced aspects of team play. I think there could be some potential there. Speaking of players, promising players who've now been benched, back in NA now, we did benched out of XSET. That was a little bit of a surprise. Kind of a shock. I mean, he's a fan-favorite player who's really done a good job of cultivating his brand and personality and just having a personality on Twitter and streams and the like, and sort of being a bit of a face of this roster. And now we is, as he said in his tweet, hashtag rep the bench instead of rep the set. So, I mean, what do we make of this one, Sam?
So if you read the tweets, obviously we don't have the tweet up, it's just the farewell picture, but if you read what the tweet actually says, it sounds like this was a difficult decision, but one that everyone felt that they needed to make, and XSET isn't on the... God, Alex. XSET isn't on that whole thing of like, we just want to get rid of him. So it says, after a lot of consideration, the Valorant team has decided to move Weeded to a sub-role. Weeded will remain on XSET for as long as he chooses. We thank him for everything he's done, and we will support him fully moving forward. So it feels like it wasn't one of those like bad terms breaks. But again, I think it came down to, and his own tweet as well, he kind of alluded to things among the players, and that was kind of, so it wasn't like a mechanical skill issue, but more an issue amongst the team themselves.
Yeah, I do want to say, in the context of that statement, I've seen a lot of different ways to phrase the same thing coming from esports orgs of benching a player.
Valid.
Oh, he's part of the family, he's one of us, blah, 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 blah. And I know that XSET likes to do that where they're supporting blah, 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 blah. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means until you see contract details. Is he still getting his full salary now that he's on the bench? Is he getting a reduced bench term? How long does that salary go on? How long does that contract go on? Do they mean we'll fully support Weeded up until he gets bought out and or this contract ends? Like, what does that mean? It's nice language, it's nice flowery language, but we have to see what the end result is. Actions speak louder than words, especially when it comes to org speak. Org speak is the biggest load of bullshit most of the time. Like, we'll get into it more when we're talking about one of the next changes, but org speak is just like, you just gotta see between the lines sometimes. What do you make of it, Ryan?
I mean, it's a weird one because I figured like we're now going into a bit of a Viper meta. Weeded was one of the first few people to pick it up and use it, so the fact that he's been dropped right now when agents like Viper and Astra and who knows, Yoru might be played quite a lot, he seemed like one of the more experimental players in North America that was happy to take the time to learn new agents and their impact. And I feel like that was one of the biggest things about XSET, is that they had players that were happy to experiment and try and get ahead of the meta. Dropping him just feels a bit weird. It's not like he was underperforming either.
That's the other thing, is that I feel like XSET were and continued to punch above their assumed weight class, right? Like, I know that at this point they're established enough that we're no longer really talking about that, right? Like, they're expected to be in the top tier because they've done it so consistently again and again and again. But still, this is a team where you go back to January, no one really had these kinds of expectations for them. We go back to like the last 4 or 5 months of their play, they have been on a meteoric rise. So unless there is something that really created a conflict or really caused an issue within the team that really said, we have to make this change, there is no option here, I am a bit surprised that management looked at their rise, looked at the level that they were achieving, and went, we can do better. We should change this. Like, it's just a little bit odd, right?
Xset feels kind of like an NA fanatic in how they're kind of pushing the boundaries in terms of their compositions and how they're playing and getting good results where a lot of people didn't expect them to, and consistently doing so. And Weeded, like you said, man, he's kind of like a mascot almost for the team. Like, when you think Viper, you think Weeded and you think Xset. Like, that's the combination has become so ingrained in our minds at this point. It makes me kind of sad, also because I love seeing the Viper meta. Although there's been a slight nerf to Viper that's coming up, not a big one. It's just the automatic or the immediate decay is dropped by like 20, so you'll still see her played, but maybe that was a factor. I don't see it being one, but
I doubt it. Again, versatility. I don't think a specific agent nerf would have led to that decision. Maybe we'll find out more about it. Maybe we'll get some interviews or something with We Did where the deets come out whenever he hopefully finds a new home, provided that's his general intention. We'll find out, I guess. That's sort of a put a pin in it and wait and see how this plays out to get more of a window into what have might caused it. Speaking of situations that are playing out, we had a coaching change come in. TSM, we had actually talked about it. Was it last week or the week before when the Cutler news came out, where we literally sat down and talked about it? We're like, who's going to be next on the chopping block? If that's not enough, it's going to be Tailored. Tailored is definitely got to be in the sights right now. Well, Tailored is in fact in the sights, and they're moving on from Tailored. And yeah, they're making a coaching change. Apparently, we've also got a report from George Guides with Upcomer that the replacement's going to be Chet, the former coach of NRG, used to be known as I'm a Pet back in his CS days. Got rid of that nickname because it's a hilarious nickname. Really an unfortunate choice when he started.
Doesn't really bestow fear in the opponents, does it?
No, it was a great name when he was like a
false sense of security. Come on,
less of a good name when he's the head coach. But yeah, Chet will be coming into that roster. Tailored is out. Tailored was with that team since before they signed with TSM. He was part of the powerhouse roster. Now he's gone. We talked about it last week and kind of said this change was probably going to be necessary. Do we still feel that way, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the players individually, you don't really want to get rid of anybody because all of them seem to have their bright moments, like getting rid of Wardell Sabrosa. Are you really going to try that? Even Drone looks like the best Phoenix in the world when he was on form, but that's been so long ago now. It feels like it's just a fundamental broken way that TSM were trying to do stuff, and a lot of it was trying something out, didn't work, trying something else out until that didn't work, and trying, idea C out, and it just felt like we never saw some stability from TSM or actually growing in a particular play style. And I think that comes down to coaching. So not surprised. I guess it was more surprising that they went for both Tailored and Cutler instead of just one or the other.
Yeah, thought they might give a little bit more time in between the change to see if that was the tweak that was necessary. But again, when you have to consider this point in the calendar, and as we've talked about on this show, if you keep missing out on these VCT cycles, your chance at finals points for the end of the year get lower and lower with each time. Like there's that time pressure of if you're going to make a change, now is the time to do it. The longer you wait, the more missed opportunities you could have. So if you felt the change in direction was there, if you felt that Chet being available was a huge potential for this team, I know he has a close relationship with several of the players. This is the opportunity. Strike while the iron's hot. The other thing about that report was I saw Ryan at Rushby Media had retweeted it and said that it added the additional context that Chet was really close to signing with Envy before the TSM deal came to fruition. So it was sort of a, if we're going to make the change, we have to make the change now. Otherwise, someone else is going to sign Chet type of situation, Sam. Do you think that Chet coming into this team is going to be sort of a bit of an answer for them?
Answer? I don't know if I'm willing to call it an answer. I think that they have, at the very least, identified the question. So this is a good start, because for the last couple of months, they have basically looked like me in a maths class, right? Completely clueless. Could not understand the question, didn't know what the formulae meant, just not a clue. And it's taken them a really long time to start making changes. A couple weeks ago, we likened them to G2. And how both of these teams had spent so long with this one roster that they refused to budge from because they were at the top of their game at the beginning. And as time went on, they just backslid so badly. But they kept holding on, like just one more tournament, just one more map, just one more. I'm sure we'll hit our stride again, and they didn't. Yeah. And it's taken. And when you think about it, so you guys were saying you were surprised to see that it was both Cutler and tailored, but I argue when you look at all the other teams that have been making changes, one change here, one change there, slowly over time, testing the waters, figuring it out, TSM are now in their kind of last chance saloon. There's one more kind of circuit left before we get to champs, and they are like, we got to do something, we got to do it now. So like drastic change might be exactly what's necessary. How that's going to pan out, I can't wait to see, because obviously this new team, however they choose to formulate it, is going to need a little bit of time to set. They've got some of that time now, but is it enough time is the question.
I will say, speaking to Chet's experience and just what he had done in CS and then with NRG as well, he's always been known as a very cerebral guy, a guy who's going to be bringing a lot to the tactical side, the analytical side, bolstering the strategy. And for TSM, that did seem to be the thing that was lacking, right? We knew they had bravado, we knew they had confidence, we knew they talked the talk, didn't always walk the walk. And a lot of it came to, they seemed to sort of age out of the meta almost, right? They were so dominant early on, and other teams adapted and they failed to keep up. So maybe bringing a player in like their coach like Chet in, who's got that cerebral ability to analyze and extrapolate from it, might be a bit of an antidote, because they've got the emotional leadership down, right? Guys like Hayes bring that experience, bring that veteran status, bring that emotion. And then you've got a guy like Chet who can sort of start to connect the dots, draw the X's and O's up on the board, and help them conquer that phase of the game. That part of it. Yeah. Let's move on, except my iPad's locked up. Hold on. Technology. How does it work? How does it work?
Boomer.
Oh, no.
Do you want a hand move it on?
Yeah, hit me with the next topic. Right?
Well, yeah, we got that. The other one is Ninja's no longer on timing, which I don't think we need to focus on too much, because Ninja's in the news for some other just weird stuff over the last couple of days anyway.
Horny tweeting? Horny tweeting about his wife?
Yeah, like sandwiches and stuff like that. I mean, I don't, like sandwiches are cool.
I'm so glad I've missed all of that.
I thought it was fine. I get why it was like really cringe for him to tweet it. Like it was just really like, really, you're gonna say that in public? But you know what? He's living his best life. I'm not gonna fault him for bragging about. You're not
gonna apologize for stuff like that.
Look, if multi-millionaire Ninja is made happy by a sandwich and some chips while he plays League of Legends, like, can't we all just aspire to that? That's a happiness we can all achieve, right? He's not like, I was driving in my Lambo. He's like, I got a sandwich. Boom. And you know what? I could use a sandwich. I vibe
That's
that.
pretty much it. But yeah, the other one was Honk and Heroic,
Anyway.
which is pretty crazy news that they might get picked up by the Cadian God team currently in Counter-Strike. And I think that would be an exceptional signing because Heroic, a really big org in Counter-Strike at the moment. They're pretty well tenured as well. They've been around quite some time. And picking up Honk is probably the best unsigned team at the moment. You could argue that it was like Volvo Peak and stuff like that, but they disbanded. And yeah, I just think that it's nice to see an orgless team that's been played together for so long with some sense of consistency actually get that recognition, hopefully being picked up by a pretty major org in Europe that's still yet to be involved. And I think another thing as well is that Mad Lions aren't looking to get involved at all because they're still unsure about Valorant, but Heroic are looking to move into the fray for Europe, which is super cool.
Yeah, I
think that's the big thing for me, just orgs. Sorry.
No, go, hit it. Go for it.
Just really exciting to see that there are more orgs getting involved. That was kind of one of our biggest things at the start of Valorant. Like, where are the orgs? NA is absolutely popping off, and EU is just like, well, we have 3. These are the ones we have, and we love them, and they're ours. But like, could we have some more? It's Oliver Twist moment there. Please, sir, can I have some more? And it's finally happening. So that's really, really exciting, not just for us, because viewers tend to get a lot more invested when it's an organization, but obviously it's a lot more healthy for the scene as a whole. This is really great news.
Yeah, and also hopefully, friend of the show, Strong, gets to go along for the ride. He's made several appearances here on
Hey.
Press 4. We love having him on.
Yeah.
He's been working with the Honk Boys, so make sure that
He's also
comes on
working
the
in
show.
crypto, so I mean that's all kicking off at the moment with
Is that
Doge,
what he's also
so-
working on? That's hilarious.
I think that's what he works in
Oh
full
my
time.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too
So-
Oh
funny.
my goodness! All right, now I
He's
need
liking
to. Now I know who I
quotes
need to go to for
for
advice.
newspapers and stuff talking about Bitcoin and stuff. So
That's
yeah,
hilarious.
I think that's his full-time job.
He's just giving
That's so
interviews about
wild.
Dogecoin and rocking Valorant servers in his
Probably,
spare
yeah.
time.
crypto
GameStop.
and all that.
That is the 21st century dream right there. Esports
Oh my
coach,
Esports and
Dogecoin
crypto.
investor, just everything to the moon. Everything
Oh,
to
man.
the moon. Let's talk about Reykjavik. Reykjavik, or whatever it is. I'm supposed to slide back. Oh, are we sliding back? There we go. There we go. We're getting our synergy down
Lord.
here. We're getting some coordination. It's just my mind.
We'll get
It's
there. We'll
mind
get
over on
there.
production. We're melding here. It's a process. But Reykjavik, we now know two more of the teams. We know the Brazilian teams that are going to be coming through. We've talked about this at every stage. We're still waiting on that LATAM result. That's tonight, right? Is it tonight?
Yeah,
Yes,
in a couple of
tonight.
hours.
So we're going to find out our last team making it through to Reykjavik. What do we make of these Brazilian squads? We got Vikings and Sharks Esports coming in. I know Sharks from CS competition as an organization. Vikings, that's a new name to me. But what do we make of this one, Ryan?
I guess I could. Yeah, Vikings is probably the most straightforward one overall. They won Masters 1. They're a team that weren't around for First Strike, so ever since they've basically been put together, they've looked really good. So seeing them dominate in this fashion, it was more like teams like Gamelanders and stuff not making it overall. Gamelanders looked really poor, and it sort of meant there was a nice opportunity for some other teams to come through and really surprise people. But yeah, Vikings are one of those, like, I guess, like Crazy Raccoons X10, consistently up there, and you'll probably see them at that Worlds event at the end of the year because they seem to just be the best team in that region without any real competition as of right now, at least.
I don't have terribly much to add to that except for a really bad joke. And that is, you know, they say you should dress for the job you want. Well, they wanted to go to Iceland, so they dressed as a Viking. I'll see myself out.
Oh, I like
That's
it.
a good joke. That's a good joke.
That is
Thank
excellent.
you.
That's excellent.
Thank you.
It's top tier. Top tier terrible dad joke puns. You said a terrible dad joke the other day. It was just
It's so good. There's something wrong with you.
oh, it's just atrocious. All right, but it adds more names to what we know is going to be there in Iceland, and there's just so many unknowns going on for that Reykjavik tournament. I'm just going to keep saying it until I get the pronunciation right. One of these shots, it'll be right. It's so exciting. It's going to be so much fun when we actually get there. But that's about all we can add to it now. Now, here's time for Sam's presentation time. You've got a little report for us about a girls' house
Lord.
tournament going on. European women's scene.
Yeah.
A little bit of Valorant. We haven't gotten a game changers there just yet. Hopefully that's coming soon.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
But
Yeah.
talk to us about Girls' House.
Yeah, so Girls' House is, I suppose, in a sense, kind of the EU Galorants, just not as established. Oh, Lord, we need Crab Rave. Somebody clip that and add the Crab Rave music. It'd just be amazing.
Crap battle. There's an
I'm
old
dying.
Flash
Okay.
animation, Metal Gear Flash animation, crab battle of just Snake losing his mind in a cave, fighting a cave crab. It's a classic. Anyone in chat who knows that?
Okay.
You're my favorite. Sam, back to you.
Yes, please. Okay. So a lot of these teams actually participated in the Huntress Trials event that I cast a little while ago. And so the graphic on your screen, which I now realize the lines, some of them are a bit thin, so it is a bit difficult to
Let's
read.
invigorate.
But nonetheless,
We can do this. Make the
Oh, we
graphic
can do this.
big. We have the power. Can we do this? Oh, I'm trying. I'm just gonna
Engorgio, some Harry
keep
Potter
doing
things.
keep doing the motion until it happens. Keep talking, Sam.
You're
What
like
do you
some big Connect
All right.
commercial.
There we go.
I'm actually dying. Okay, anyways. So taking a look, Oxygen Esports had come in first place at the Huntress Trials. And you can see over in Girls' House, their performance was just not as good. Legals, who had been predicted to be the winners of the Huntress Trials, got picked up by Rix GG, who incidentally were one of the organizations involved with Huntress Trials, one of the sponsors, picked up the team, and immediately they go up a couple placement points there. But it's really interesting to see the dynamic between some of these teams and how those placements have changed. Most notably, of course, Project X, that have managed to skyrocket all the way up to a second place placing. Now, the biggest thing that kind of jumps out to me about this is that the European female scene is improving constantly all the time, and it's so exciting to see. We don't have as many FE tournaments, and I've actually seen quite a few female gamers in the European scene saying, you know, please can we have a female Galorant's thing. Galorant has like 5,000 members or 6,000 members. We need like an EU version. Having tournaments once every 2 to 3 months is just not great. These ladies need an arena. They need a battle arena, and for them to be making this many moves in such a short amount of time, it's exciting and it shows progress. And I think that, well, I hope that when we eventually get our EU game changes, that's going to be kind of the thing that propels us forward a little bit further. If you look at Girls House, I mean, if I remember correctly, the broadcast crew, it was all like volunteer work. It's a very, very small organization. We need some growth here, people. We need some support so that these ladies have a chance to shine.
That speaking of support for women's teams having a chance to shine, in NA we don't have that problem because we're getting another Game Changers tournament already. Hell yeah! Oh boy, Game Changers 2 coming through. This is NSG working in partnership with Dignitas, which is super cool. Obviously, Dignitas has a women's team as well that'll presumably be competing in the event. But also, I know that Sapphire, who's I think still the VP of marketing over there. I don't know whether her title's changed. Huge supporter of women's tournaments and competition. She tweeted out that this is sort of like been one of her dreams to organize this kind of an event over the years, and so that's super cool to have come in. Another Game Changers. I'm very into it. Obviously, we've had a bunch of teams picked up. TSM now has a team. CLG now has a team.
Yep.
This was in advance of the last Game Changers, but now they've actually had time to work together. CLG actually, you know, has a roster as opposed to having 3 pieces of a roster they signed a week ago. They've actually been practicing. They've got coaches, all that sort of stuff sorted out. Like, there's a lot more development outside of just Cloud9 White. And I'm thinking, this might just be the tournament where maybe Cloud9 White could be a bit vulnerable. What do you make of that, Sam?
I think that you're right. Particularly, I know that Dignitas also made a change up recently. I was going to put it in the run it back, but I figured not too many people are that clued up on the FE scene. But they just picked up Stephanie, a new player for their roster. So this is really exciting. Moves are still happening. The scene isn't stagnating. The ladies are playing. The Galorant server is booming, not just for the players, but for the casters as well. Everybody's getting involved. Everybody's getting excited for the female scene. And of course, because we know that Game Changers is a thing, the Cloud9 team that has been putting in all of this effort for the past year or just under a year is not the only team that's doing that. Now we have all these other teams, like you said, getting picked up, putting in the work, putting in the time. And I had already noted on the massive improvement from some teams like Dignitas, just from the FTW Summer Showdown all the way through to Game Changers. Now, when there's even more on the line and they realize that even more teams are practicing, the competition for C9 is going to be insanely stiff. In fact, it was pretty stiff in the last one. They got pushed relatively far in that final. So hopefully we're going to see more of that out of these ladies.
Speaking of that final as well, our MVP for that event is no longer on the Cloud9 White roster. Katie no longer on the team for a lot of reasons we're not going to get into right now. But that Cloud9 White team, that's another factor that might make them vulnerable. Do you think there's some signs of concerns there specifically for the C9 roster, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, like, we'll talk a little bit about an event that they played in recently that they just, I think, bombed out in the quarterfinals around the 16 against Team Basilisk and stuff. So it's not been a good run of form for Cloud9 White across all of the different tournaments, not just the FE scene. I do think it's an interesting one, though. Like, from casting the first one, it's difficult to get a gauge because everybody knows Cloud9 White are their favorites, but we didn't really know who else was going to be a top contender, what other players to keep an eye on. Now we have some sense of consistency so we can see what's changed, who's improved, the dynamic shifting. And that's, you know, for a caster, much more interesting to me because I can see where things are going, where they've been, where they're going to go to, as opposed to just like a one-off event isolated. It's very difficult to know what to expect. So I'm really excited to see more tournaments roll out so we can actually see these guys on screen more and kind of go, okay, this is a star player in the making.
One of the rosters as well that I hope is going to be participating in this tournament, I assume is going to be participating in this tournament, that I'm very excited to see in action, is the project that's currently in the works with Artstar, Lunar Cats, and Arianarchist.
Yes.
I think that could be a really dynamic team. I mean, these are pieces who have all sort of been associated with different rosters, and then work out, and we'll get into the whole TSM thing, I guess. But I'm excited to see them get an opportunity to show what they can do, actually, within a team that they've been a part of and they've been building and they've been working on as a project. I think they could bang. It could be kind of fun to watch. Speaking of some teams that banged, the Nerdster Gamers Summer Championship Open 5 happened, and we had 2 new names in the final who hadn't made it to the final of any of the other Opens. So some change-up here, some change-up going on. Ryan, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, the main big winners was Goofy Goobers because, of course, good old SpongeBob SquarePants meme. I think overall, like, I didn't get to catch the match live because it was like 5 a.m. my time, so I had to sort of catch up on the results after watching the first few rounds. There were some pretty big teams in there overall that I think just, like Renegades, I think they're pretty much booked in for this tournament because of the points that they accrued and winning monthlies and all that kind of stuff.
They've got a
they didn't do
spot,
as well. They lost to Ghost. Ghost lost to Some to Prove, which ended up being in the final alongside Goofy Goobers. There was Saw in there, Kooky Koalas, Take Flight, a lot of those tier 2/tier 3 teams. So it is really cool to see 2 unsigned teams make it to the final and look that good. I think Sam mentioned it earlier on when it comes to some of the players involved. You've got D-Cop, probably the main well-known one. Brando that used to be on Xset. And yeah, it's just like a nice, interesting look at all of these players that are now forming rosters that could potentially be signed in the future. I think there's a bit of a trying to think of the word, like a tiredness, I suppose, about Orgs coming into NA Valorant because it's so competitive. There's so many. It's still nice to see the Orgless teams are making runs and could potentially upset some teams in the bigger tournaments. So seeing these guys at the top is super cool to see.
I mean, we've had this discussion of, like, what's the saturation point for the NA Valorant scene? Like, at what point have we sort of found all of the talent, and then we're going to continue to shuffle and figure that out? And it seems like we're not at that point yet with these unsigned teams making it through, besting some orgs, besting some matchups. It's just super exciting for it, Sam. Do you think that either of these teams has shown what it takes to maybe attract some investment here?
Well, given that both of these teams have made it all the way to the final and have some pretty big names to boot, it's one of those things. We kind of speak about how sometimes you'll get dropped from a team, not because of mechanical stuff, but because of like team environment and la-di-da. So maybe this is where they find that team environment that just clicks and just works. I think the biggest poetic moment for me watching this was Bancroft, who I believe was he was on Ghost, and he's on the team called Some to Prove. And he kind of proved it by knocking Ghost out 2-0. So there you go. Point proven and making his way all the way to the final. I got to see a little bit of the games. First and foremost, shout out to Gio, her very first Valorant cast. I think she did fantastically. And the teams themselves, there's so much talent there. I think D-Cop is somebody we've mentioned before. And the reason we mention him so much is because he plays so well and he continued to deliver throughout this tournament. Suya as well put up a really great show. Also from what is it? Gooby Goofers? What?
Goofy Goobers. You were close.
Somebody didn't watch the
Goobers.
SpongeBob SquarePants movie, and it
I
shows.
don't watch SpongeBob. I don't watch it. It's terrible. I'm sorry. That's my hot take for the day. We needed at least one hot take on the show, and that's mine. SpongeBob is not that good.
Oh, wow. Sam just pissed off a bunch of 90s kids and OO kids.
I am a 90s kid. What do you want from me?
Yeah, well, you're a broken one, apparently. You're just wrong.
Wow.
It happens. Just for shame. I can't believe I'm on the same stage as you, except that I'm not.
You're not.
Digitally here.
Sag.
I can bop people on the head. Oh. No, it doesn't really work. I go right behind your camera.
No, it really doesn't.
I mean, look, I can dream. I can dream here. All right. I think this is about going to wrap up our show here. I think we're coming to the close of it. We've been live for a little while. There was a very nice. Here's a nice thing to point out. Mother's Day was this past weekend. There's a very lovely Mother's Day interview with TenZ's mom. So go read it on nerdstreetgamers.com/news or just nerdstreetgamers.com. You can find the article. It's out there. It's probably on the Nerd Street Gamers Twitter as Puns and Buns is taking a photo of me on this set. So check it out there.
Again.
Be sure to read that article because it's super wholesome, super cool the way that she supports her son competing. It's just very nice. It's just very nice. But to close out the show, we're going to wander back over to my fabulous fence here. Mike and Ike boxes complete with it. Going to crack open one of these Mike and Ike boxes, and that's pretty much going to be my lunch. I'm very excited for it. This has been the first Yeah, they do, right? This,
I know
this
that
shot
was
makes
that
me
was
look
my
tiny.
comment.
It's great. This
Yeah.
shot makes me look so tiny in comparison to you. I promise, folks, I'm about 6 feet tall. A little bit more, a little bit less. Somewhere in the shake.
I was making a comment earlier that I really wish I was on the set so that I could open a box of Mike and Ike's and throw them at him. I can't do that from Europe.
Well, if you were
I
actually on the
can't go that
set,
far.
since you said you're 5'1", right?
Yes, I
Pretty
am.
sure you'd be like here on the fence.
We might have to change the height of the fence.
Thereabouts. Yeah, we need to get you a stool or like
Yeah,
just there's a
that's
seat
Oh,
not a
you
good
Lord.
look.
could
We need
stand
a
on.
box.
Oh
It'd
no!
be like
oh,
you'd
no.
be like peeking over. Hi. That'd be great. Now I really want to make that happen. Thank you so much for tuning in,
no.
everybody. This has been another Press 4 to Defuse live from the studio. We'll get the jam of this studio. This is the first time we've actually revealed this stage and this set and used it. It's so much fun. There's a lot of things that we can do with it. There's a lot of fun things that we're going to be able to bring to the show now that we've got a physical location and things are working out. But thank you so much for tuning in. As always, tune in every week at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know today was a little late. It's okay. First run in a new studio is always a little bit of a challenge. But be sure to tune in every week, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to hear more hot Valorant takes while we're not live, be sure to follow these two lovely people on Twitter. You can find their ats down below their faces. I guess you can toss me a follow too. And follow NSG for all the good stuff. Articles about TenZ's mom, articles about games, power rankings, this, that, and the other thing. The news is popping off over on nerdstreetgamers.com, so be sure to check it out. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone! Bye, Panda! Bye, Mike!
Bye, Panda!
Bye, Ike!